In this African village tradition, a groom will be flogged with 100 strokes of cane by 7 strong men without screaming or crying. Only then will he be given a wife to marry and build a family with. Once upon a time in the village of Okan, there lived a man named Buka. Buka was strong and kind, and everyone in the village knew him. But now Buka had something more important to do. He was going to marry the love of his life, Ioma. Ioma was not from Okan. Her village was far, far away. To get there, they would have to walk for 3 days, crossing thick forests, wide rivers, and climbing steep hills. Buka knew it wouldn't be easy, so he called his 3 best friends. "My friends," he said, "I need you to come with me. The journey is long, and I can't do it alone." His friends, strong like lions and loyal as the morning sun, agreed. They packed their bags with food and water, and early the next morning, they set off, with Ioma leading the way. The first day was full of adventure. The forest was alive with the songs of birds and the rustling of leaves. Buka and his friends laughed as they walked, telling stories and chasing squirrels that darted across their path. The second day was harder. The sun was hot, beating down on their backs like a blacksmith's hammer. They crossed a wide river, its water cool and clear, but the journey was tiring, and their feet ached with every step. Still, Buka didn't complain. His heart was strong, filled with love for Ioma. By the third day, their journey was almost over. The air grew cooler, and the land became flat. "We're close," Ioma said, her voice soft but full of hope. Finally, just as the sun began to set, they saw it, Ioma's village. It sat on a hill, surrounded by tall trees that swayed in the evening breeze. Buka and his friends felt a rush of excitement. They had made it. Tired but happy, they walked into the village, ready for what lay ahead. Little did they know, the real test was just about to begin. As Buka and his friends stepped into Ioma's village, they were met with a sight that made their hearts swell. Drums beat loudly, their rhythm shaking the ground beneath their feet. Villagers dressed in bright, flowing clothes danced in circles, their feet stamping joyfully on the earth. Children ran around, laughing and clapping, while the women carried bowls of steaming food and pots of fresh palm wine. "Welcome! Welcome!" the villagers shouted, their voices rising like the morning birds. They surrounded Buka and his friends, cheering and singing songs of celebration. "You are honored guests." Buka and his friends exchanged amazed glances. They hadn't expected such a royal welcome. They were treated like kings, their dusty feet forgotten as they were led to a large hut filled with food and drink. "Eat, drink, and rest," said Ioma's father, his voice deep and full of warmth. "Tomorrow we celebrate the union of our daughter and her brave husband." But as Buka and his friends began to relax, something strange happened. Out of the corner of his eye, one of Buka's friends saw it, a long, shiny snake slithering across the floor. He froze, his hand instinctively reaching for a stick lying nearby. "Snake," he whispered, his voice sharp. The others looked and saw it too. Another snake slithered near the doorway, its scales catching the light, and then another appeared, curling lazily around a wooden pole. Buka's friend gripped the stick tightly, raising it high to strike, but before he could swing, a villager screamed, "No! Stop!" The sound was so loud it felt like thunder. The music stopped, and the dancers froze. Ioma's father rushed forward, his hands outstretched. "Put down the stick," he commanded. "You must not harm them." Confused and frightened, Buka's friend lowered the stick. "Why?" he asked, his voice shaking. "These are not just snakes," Ioma's father said, his voice firm. "They are our ancestors. We worship them. To harm them is to bring great misfortune upon us all." Buka and his friends stood still, their hearts pounding like the village drums. Ancestor snakes, they couldn't believe their ears. "But they could bite us," one of Buka's friends whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "They will not harm you," Ioma's father assured them. "As long as your heart is pure and your hands do not seek to harm, they will pass you by." The villagers watched, holding their breath, as Buka and his friends realized the truth of his words. If you've made it this far, I encourage you to like and subscribe to the channel to continue enjoying fascinating content like this. Your support is very important to us. Nodding in agreement, their faces serious, slowly the music resumed, and the villagers returned to their celebration. But for Buka and his friends, the joy of the moment had dimmed. That night, as they sat in the hut, the snakes moved freely around the village, slithering in and out of houses like silent shadows. Buka and his friends could only watch, their unease growing with every passing moment. They had been welcomed like kings, but now they felt like strangers in a land of mysteries. The sun rose bright and golden, lighting up the village of Ioma. The air was filled with the sweet smell of roasted yams and fresh palm wine. Today was the big day. Buka was going to marry Ioma. He woke up early, his heart thumping with excitement. He dressed in his finest clothes, a flowing white robe with intricate patterns that shimmered in the sunlight. His friends, still tired from the sleepless night, helped him get ready. "You look like a true groom," one of them said, trying to smile despite the lingering fear of the snakes. The village gathered for the wedding. Drums beat loudly, and villagers danced with joy. Ioma stepped out, dressed like a queen, her head adorned with beads, and her gown sparkled like the stars. Buka's heart swelled with love as he watched her walk gracefully toward him. The ceremony began with songs and blessings. The villagers clapped and cheered, their voices rising in celebration. For a moment, everything felt perfect. But just as Buka thought he was about to seal his union with Ioma, her father stood up, raising his hand for silence. "The time has come for the marriage rite," he announced. Buka smiled, thinking it was just another blessing, but Ioma's father's next words hit him like a thunderclap. "In our village, when a man from outside wishes to marry our daughter, he must be flogged by 7 men, and he must not cry, not even once." The crowd murmured in agreement, their faces serious. Buka's smile disappeared. "What?" he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. "It is our tradition," Ioma's father said firmly. "To prove you are strong enough to protect our daughter, you must endure the flogging without a sound." Buka's friends gasped. One of them grabbed his arm. "This is madness," he said. "Buka, let's leave now. Marriage is not by force." Buka stood frozen, his mind racing. The joyous celebration now felt like a trap. He looked at Ioma, her eyes were pleading. She hadn't told him about this rite. "Right, Buka, please," his friend begged. "Let's go home." But Buka shook his head. His love for Ioma burned brighter than his fear. "I love her," he said firmly. "If this is what it takes to marry her, then I will endure it." The crowd cheered as Buka stepped forward. The 7 men, tall and strong, each holding a long cane, lined up in front of him. Buka's friends watched in horror, their hearts heavy. "If you cry out," Ioma's father warned, "we will start again." The first man stepped forward, his face stern. Without hesitation, he swung the cane. Whack! The sound echoed through the village, sharp and piercing. Buka's body jerked, but he didn't make a sound. His teeth were clenched, his eyes squeezed shut. The second man swung. Whack! The pain shot through Buka like fire, but still, he stood firm. Then came the third and the fourth. Each stroke was worse than the last. It felt as though his back was being torn apart. Sweat poured down his face, his legs trembled, but he refused to cry. The villagers cheered louder, their drums beating in rhythm with the strokes. They danced and sang as if celebrating his pain. Buka's friends stood to the side, their faces pale, their hearts heavy. But Buka didn't respond. His mind was focused on enduring, on proving his love for Ioma. Would he enjoy the rest of the flogging without a sound, or would the pain break him? The test had only just begun. Then came the fifth man. His cane was thicker, and when it landed on Buka's back, the pain was unbearable. Buka gasped, his knees buckling slightly, but he held on. The sixth stroke landed, and this time, Buka couldn't hold it in. A scream burst from his lips, raw and filled with pain. Everything stopped. The music, the cheering, the dancing, all went silent. The 7 men stepped back, their canes lowered. Ioma's father stepped forward, his face serious. "He has cried out," he said, his voice loud and clear. "The canes must be replaced, and the flogging will start again." Buka's heart sank. His friends rushed to him, their hands on his shoulders. "Buka, enough," one of them said, his voice desperate. "You've proven your love. Let's go home." But Buka shook his head, his face set with determination. "No," he said through gritted teeth. "I won't give up." The villagers brought out new canes, even longer and sharper than the first. The 7 men prepared to begin again, their faces unchanging. Buka stood once more, his body aching, his spirit tested. He knew the next round would be even harder, but his love for Ioma was stronger than the pain. He would endure it, no matter what. Buka's heart pounded like the village drums. His back burned, his legs wobbled, and his mind screamed for him to flee. I hope you enjoyed this amazing trip. Subscribe and don't miss our next video. See you next time.